8 o'clock.
Good morning. This is Northern Light for Wednesday, October 18th. I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Todd Moe.
Canadian workers on the St. Lawrence Seaway could go on strike as early as today if they can't reach a deal on a new contract. That could mean the end of shipping season.
Especially as Canada is in its prime grain cargo shipping time frame. That's something that they depend on. Farmers across Canada and in the Midwest ship cargo to move their products.
Also, Watertown's hospital is having to expand its emergency room due to a spike in the number of patients dealing with acute mental health crises.
Pre-pandemic, we might see on average about 4 patients per day. Since then, though, beginning in 2022, we began to see on average about 8 patients a day, and sometimes that would peak as high as 20 patients on any given day.
We'll meet a Saranac Lake couple who's been setting up little goat statues in their front lawn all year. And a change of seasons means it's time to check in with poet David Cruz. He's living and writing about the landscape and environment in Vermont. Shares a new poem each season. All of that and more is coming up on Northern Light. Stick with us.
Broadcast of Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio is supported by St. Lawrence Health, offering My Care, a way for patients to access health information and stay connected to their care team. Registration is available at stlawrencehealthsystem.org. And Mountain Orthotic and Prosthetic Services, a full-service practice committed to providing care for patients of all ages with offices in Lake Placid, Plattsburgh, and Malone. Details and referrals at mountainonp.com. Good morning, Emily Russell.
Hey, good morning, Todd. Yeah, beautiful morning here in the North Country. A great day to give to public radio, ncpr.org/give. We are just in the final days of our fall fundraiser. If you haven't given yet, now is the time, ncpr.org/give. You can also pick up the phone this morning. We've got folks standing by to take your call, 877-388-6277, or again, online, ncpr.org/give. And we're going to get to the local news in just a minute, but I wanted to kind of take a step back and talk to you about what goes into the show that you're about to hear. You know, here at NCPR, we really focus on the local news, what's happening in your communities, and we talk every single day about what's the most important things that we need to be covering here for you on NCPR. We talk about that every single day, and we bring you that news on healthcare, on childcare, on education and politics, and all that stuff is so important, and it's something you know you can rely on hearing here at NCPR. But here's the thing that sets us apart, that makes NCPR so special. We also bring you really joyful moments. We bring you creative conversations with a poet in Vermont, which you're going to hear on this show. We also talk to artists from places like Lake George, Chestertown. We talk to authors, folks in Watertown, Plattsburgh. We bring you on hikes, paddles, and skis. And we really value introducing you to the amazing folks that live and work and play here in the North Country. And again, it really is what sets North Country Public Radio apart. And I know you know that because you're listening. You know what to expect from North Country Public Radio, because you value that kind of diverse array of hard news and happy conversations. ncpr.org/give, or pick up the phone this morning, 877-388-6277. Thanks. And here's Northern Light.
This is Northern Light. I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Todd Moe. Canadian workers on the St. Lawrence Seaway have overwhelmingly voted to strike if they can't make a deal on a new contract by October 21st. Catherine Wheeler reports the Canadian not-for-profit that oversees the Seaway has warned it would have to shut down if workers go on strike.
The Unifor union members could go on strike as early as today if the St. Lawrence Seaway Management Corporation doesn't make a deal. This is the third time the groups have sat down to negotiate a contract since the old one expired back in March. The union says workers want a pay increase.
For a strike to actually occur, in the modern day, this would be a big blow to the maritime industry in North America.
That's Michael Folsom, an observer who runs the St. Lawrence Seaway Ship Watchers Network.
Because, it is a vital lane to the interstates and mid-continental Canada. So, for this to even be a potential, it runs a great risk in bringing commerce to Middle America.
The Seaway is a system of locks and channels on the St. Lawrence River and other waterways that allow ships to go between the Atlantic Ocean and the Great Lakes. Folsom says these Canadian workers control some of those lock operations, and a long strike would mean the end for the shipping season on the Seaway.
Especially as Canada is in its prime grain cargo shipping time frame. That's something that they depend on. Farmers across Canada and in the Midwest in the United States depend on ship cargo to move their products.
The U.S. side of the Seaway operates 2 locks in Messina, employing 120 people. Folsom says they're not striking, but they wouldn't be able to do much.
Without access through the lock at Montreal, no ship would end up reaching the U.S. locks in Messina. So these folks in Messina kind of have their hands up in the air, I would imagine, at this point, waiting to see what happens.
The St. Lawrence Seaway Management Corporation has been warning ships since earlier this month that they might not be able to get in or out if there's a strike. Folsom says he thinks talks between the corporation and the union will be aggressive as the October 21st strike deadline gets closer. Catherine Wheeler, North Country Public Radio.
The mental health crisis is having a very tangible effect in Watertown. The hospital there is having to expand its emergency room to accommodate a sharp increase in the number of patients needing acute mental health care. Too often, those patients were stuck in the ER waiting room when they needed immediate attention. The $2.5 million expansion at Samaritan Medical Center will almost double the number of special safe beds for mental health patients. Samaritan CEO Tom Carman spoke with David Summerstein.
Pre-pandemic, we might see on average about 4 patients per day coming into our behavioral health unit. Since then, though, beginning in 2022, we began to see on average about 8 patients a day, and sometimes that would peak as high as 20 patients on any given day. In the summer of 2022, we actually went about 45 days that our emergency department was on psychiatric diversion because we had more than 7 patients in our facility. We just couldn't accommodate anymore.
So what do you know about why so many more patients are coming into the ER looking for behavioral health treatment, so many more than just a few years ago?
That is a great question, and I'm not sure we have a real firm answer for that. We do believe that the pandemic has contributed to this. It could be because of the isolation of the pandemic. It could be because of the pandemic itself. There probably are many other factors as well that have driven this. It could be the rise in homelessness that we're seeing. It could also be the rise in drug use as well. There's probably a lot of different factors, but we do not have a specific reason for this significant growth. And I don't think it's unique to Watertown and Jefferson County in the North Country. I think this is happening across the state and across the nation as well.
One thing I noticed from your data was that there were a lot more children seeking behavioral health care. What can you say about that?
You're absolutely right. That is something we have seen a dramatic increase in the number of children who are seeking care. I suspect this is probably more related to the pandemic, probably not having schools in person for a long period of time, maybe the isolation that the children were experiencing as well. But it has been a significant increase. And frankly, that's a population that is more difficult for us to treat as well. For those that can withstand outpatient care, we have some great services throughout the region. But for those that need inpatient care, we do not have any inpatient mental health unit beds for adolescents or children. So we have to have those patients transferred across the state.
Explain to people why you need sort of separate rooms for people who come with behavioral health issues than just regular people coming into the ER needing ER rooms.
So the purpose behind a behavioral health unit, number one, is it's much more secure. It's secure for the patients. that are coming in. It ensures that they are protected. Each of these rooms is relatively sterile. It has nothing on the walls that someone could hurt themselves with or hang themselves with. We refer to that as ligature risk, and we need to make certain that there's nothing that a psychiatric patient or behavioral health patient could harm themselves with. And so these behavioral health units, rooms themselves, are designed specifically to ensure the safety of the patients that we're treating.
What kind of issues are people coming in with? I mean, how would you describe sort of the range of symptoms, I guess, that people come in with that are needing this help?
We have great support in this community for behavioral health patients, both with the programs that we run at Samaritan and other community-based organizations. There's a great network of programs throughout Watertown, Jefferson County, and frankly, the North Country. But when a patient does present to Samaritan, to the emergency department, they're generally presenting as a harm to themselves or others. So they either have suicidal ideations where they might harm themselves, or they might have indicated that they would harm someone else. That's typically what brings the patient to the Samaritan Emergency Department, which is why even expanding outpatient services is not necessarily going to solve this problem, because once they get to that stage, we are really the only place that can safely take care of them.
This expansion is going to cost $2.5 million. That's a huge expense that you didn't see coming, and that was a response to a pretty drastic change in the healthcare needs of the population. As a healthcare system, how do you manage that?
So that is a challenge for us. As you noted, this was not an anticipated project that we had taken on, but something we have to do. We had not budgeted for this in our capital budget, but we are very, very fortunate that we have already some folks that have brought forth some donations to help with this. Our own Children's Miracle Network is providing $300,000 for this project. And Jefferson County, through some of their funding that they have available for addiction issues, is also providing $430,000 to us as well. Our foundation, through some of the fundraising that they do through a golf tournament, as well as the Festival of Trees, will also be used for this project. And we are seeking other funding as well to try to help offset this. Otherwise, the hospital will pay for this out of its reserves.
That's Tom Carmen, President and CEO of Samaritan Medical Center in Watertown. He spoke with David Summerstein.
You're listening to Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio. It's 8:12. Good morning. I'm Todd Moe.
And I'm Monica Sandreski. Coming up, an autumn poem in honor of a mountain, river, and Native American history. Conversation with David Cruz coming up in just a few minutes right here on Northern Light, which you find only here on North Country Public Radio. We are in the final days of our fall fundraiser, and now is the time to give at ncpr.org. NCPR is a community resource. I think of it like our food pantries, our local libraries, and community art centers. These are the places that are oriented to the community, that strive to be better and better understand what the North Country is like, to be able to better respond. And that's what NCPR does. NCPR is where we all go to get contextual and in-depth reporting about our area, where we come to hear moving conversations with poets and artists. NCPR is where we all go. And in turn, the aim at NCPR and Northern Light is to be a mirror back to the community and paint a more and more truer picture of our region. This is why I give monthly to NCPR, because this resource is so important to our region. You make it possible. Your neighbors are giving generously. They're depending on you to give too. Now is the time. Call 877-388-6277 or give online at ncpr.org/give. And thank you.
Northern Light is supported by Blue Seed Studios, a multidisciplinary arts center featuring classes for adults and youth, concerts, art exhibits, and more. BLUseedstudios.org. And by St. Lawrence Nurseries, Potsdam, accepting orders now through April 12th for cold hardy fruit and nut trees. Details at slngrow.com.
The St. Regis Mohawk Tribe's Tourism Office has won a New York State Tourism Award. Akwesasne Travel was named the Champions of Change. That new award focuses on sustainability, low-impact tourism, and highlighting local cultures. The judges said communities across the world could benefit from using Akwesasne's efforts as a blueprint for supporting Indigenous heritage. Akwesasne Travel is within the tribe's Economic Development Office. Its tours meet with local experts for experiences that include traditional wooden lacrosse stick-making, basketry, and loom beadwork.
If you've driven through Saranac Lake at all since the spring, you might have noticed an elaborate lawn scene in front of a house along Lake Flower. A retired couple has been arranging little statues of goats and other animals on their front lawn in what they call vignettes. The scenes of the animals at a cookout, playing music, paddling in kayaks. Keith and Marge Murphy rearrange the statued animals every few weeks. Emily Russell caught up with them this week as they set up their next scene, welcoming a new goat to the group.
Hi, I'm Keith Murphy, and we're right now at our house on Lake Flower Avenue in Saranac Lake, New York.
I'm Marge Murphy, and same goes for me.
By the way, half of our old apartment upstairs is full of goat stuff now. It's been taken over. We don't throw anything out. As we have the setups, we just keep it thinking, well, we'll use it next year.
I'll come back.
About 10 years ago, we were camping in Central Florida, and we came upon a yard sale with Greta out there. Greta was the original goat, the white metal goat that's quite famous, at least in Saranac Lake. And then we went to a yard sale in Lake Clear and found Gus.
And then a little bit later, Keith said, we need a baby goat. And so I went on eBay and found a used baby metal goat, which turned out to be Gilbert, and I gave it to Keith for our anniversary.
Marge, you're going to get the clothespins? And, okay. Well, one of the first ones we did was the goats climbing the telephone pole out front. So we had the two adult goats, and then little Gilbert, climbing. I kind of secured him to the pole about 5 foot high, and it looked like they were all pushing each other up the pole, and that was kind of popular. But I think Marge's favorite one is the tipped over garbage.
The goats got into the recycling. Like I said, we use what we have. So we tipped over the recycling bin. We had goats coming out of it with tin cans on their ears, that old cliche about goats loving to eat tin cans. And that was one of my favorite. They had a good time.
The worst nightmare was that someday this place would be turned into a dumping grounds for everybody's used furniture and stuff. But fortunately, that hasn't happened so far.
When we did the boat race, it was funny because we had 2 kayaks out here full of goats. And while we were setting it up, people kept pulling over wanting to buy our kayaks. Yeah, I had to put a sign on them saying not for sale.
Well, Greta, about 2 weeks ago, I guess it was, she was out there as part of one of our vignettes, and we got up in the morning, and she was just simply gone. And at first I thought maybe it was just a little prank. Somebody put it behind the house or put it someplace on a roof or something like that. And that didn't turn out to be.
We posted her missing. It immediately got 600 likes or tears or whatever, and more than 250 people shared our plea looking for information on Greta. So now the story on Facebook is that her sister Gretchen is working her way north. She's going to come help Gus with the kids. And everybody's eagerly waiting for Gretchen to appear.
So that's what we're doing today. We're putting Gretchen out in our new vignette with the camper trailer. And it's basically a greeting and welcoming party for Gretchen. I bought this bale of straw about 3 months ago over at Coakley's, thinking I could use it somehow, and finally figured out how we're going to use it. Straws position Gretchen in a higher position so you can see her. So that's what we're going to do, is try and get her to be up on the bale of straw and hopefully not fall over. A lot of the goats, especially on an unstable surface, they could tip over pretty easily. They're like fainting goats. You ever see a fainting goat? They're hysterical. But you see, they're kind of the legs are kind of tight together, so if they get a wind, they'll fall over sometimes. So the larger goats, sometimes I have to pound in stakes in the ground or into whatever we're using. And it looks like I'm impaling the poor thing, but I assure you that no ghosts are hurt in this operation. I think we got it. At least for the next couple hours. We'll probably come back out after lunch and move around. But I like the banner's up, welcome's up. It's good. I think we got it. It's a take.
I think we need a new banner.
Well, yeah.
That was Keith and Marge Murphy talking about their lawn scene of statue goats in Saranac Lake. You can see Gretchen the goat and all of her friends in front of the Murphys' lawn along Lake Flower this week. That piece was produced by Emily Russell, our Adirondack reporter, who is joining us this morning to talk about the final days of our fall fundraiser. And Emily, I'm so glad that you're here this morning. What a treat to get to hear these stories from our community about life here in the North Country. It's a good example of just how special this place is. You know, the North Country is full of people like Marge and Keith Murphy, people that are getting creative and they're finding joy in their communities and showing that off and sharing it with their friends and neighbors. And it's just such a special thing that we get to share that with you here every single day. You know, it's part of what we do here on North Country Public Radio and particularly Northern Light. NCPR.org/give. If you find joy on North Country Public Radio, if our stories make you smile or make you think or, you know, introduce you to voices or ideas that you've never heard of before, if NCPR enriches your life, ncpr.org/give or pick up the phone 877-388-6277. And, you know, it's another example of the rich array of what's happening here in the North Country and the conversations we bring you every weekday morning here on Northern Light. And we're about to hear another wonderful conversation with a poet that we've heard from over the last few months with Todd. And it's just, you know, it's really a special thing that we get to offer you here on North Country Public Radio. And it would not be possible without your support. Donations from listeners are essential to what we do here at NCPR. If you haven't given yet, again, these are just the final few days of our fall fundraiser. The time is now, ncpr.org/give or pick up the phone 877-388-6277. Yes, I just want to step in here real quick, Emily. I just so appreciate what you said about what a special place that the North Country is. I mean, when you listen to North Country Public Radio, you know that there is something special about this station. I've worked at, and Emily, I know you have too, you've worked at other stations, listened to other public radio stations. I'm sure many listeners have in other parts of the country. And I don't need to tell you, but there is something special about NCPR, and I think it's because the North Country is an extremely special place to be. I mean, just hearing it even in this story from Keith and Marge Murphy, I mean, people here care so deeply about the North Country. I know you see it. I see it. I mean, listeners, you care about the land, the wildlife, the farms, the arts, the people, the way of life up here. And because of that, because NCPR is a reflection of this place that we live, you make the station this dynamic and joyful and thoughtful place that it is. And we ask you to help empower it and keep it this community resource here for you, for your neighbors who don't listen to the station, your children. So now is the time to give. Call 877-388-6277 or give now online at ncpr.org/give. And thank you so much for your support.
listening to Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio. I'm Todd Moe.
And I'm Monica Sandreski. In just a minute, when a mountain, a river, and a Native American hero inspire an autumn poem. That conversation in just a minute. Then stick around after the show for Bird Note coming up at 8:42. First, Todd has a look at the weather for us.
We have mostly cloudy skies today, highs in the 50s, near 60 this afternoon, light winds out of the south, maybe an occasional shower. Lows dipping down into the 30s and 40s overnight tonight under partly cloudy skies. And then tomorrow, a little milder, highs near 60 on Thursday and Friday with partly cloudy skies. Slight chance of some scattered showers on Friday, and through the weekend, a greater chance of rain both Saturday and Sunday with highs in the 40s and 50s on Saturday and Sunday. But today, 50s for highs, and tomorrow, a high near 60. Right now, clouds, 48 degrees here in Canton.
As part of a series of seasonal conversations and poetry, our Todd Moe spoke with Vermont poet David Cruz about his poems and their connections to mountains, wilderness, history, and waterways. Cruz lives and works on a vegetable farm in Shaftesbury, Vermont, where he also relishes time in the woods, climbing mountains, hiking along rivers, and exploring regional history.
It's a busy time on the farm during the fall harvest. David told me that in between plucking cabbages and digging carrots and potatoes, he does get a chance to write. He's working on a series of poems to honor the Hoosick River watershed. It's a project sponsored by the Hoosick River Watershed Association. The Hoosick is a 73-mile-long tributary of the Hudson that connects New York to Vermont and Massachusetts. And he told me that he's grateful for a life among the mountains and rivers, especially during the year's most colorful season.
With this Hoosick River project, I've been trying to visit public preserved lands, within the watershed. I've had a couple of really wonderful hikes. I left north on the Appalachian Trail from North Adams, Massachusetts, went up and went past the Vermont state border, which begins the Long Trail. And that's a mountain range in the southern Greens called the Hoosac Range. So, of course, it probably generates from the same word as Hoosick, right? The river. I also got to visit the northern terminus of the Taconic Crest Trail, which is in the Taconic Mountains. And that's just about a little bit west of Pownell, southern Vermont. You cross the border into New York to hit that trail. Visiting some good spots and trying to get, inspiration for some of these poems.
We should probably let listeners know a little bit about the Hoosick watershed, because it's interesting that it's kind of like the three corners in a way, Vermont, Massachusetts, and New York, right?
Yeah, it's really quite cool. So basically, the Hoosick River leaves source waters in the Cheshire Reservoir, which is just east of Mount Greylock in southern Massachusetts. And, this will come up actually in the poem I'm going to read for you today. But basically, the river flows north along the Appalachian Trail, flows into North Adams, picks up the south branch of the Hoosick. It hits the Hoosac Range and turns left. It flows west into Williams, picks up Green River, hits the northern Taconic Range, then turns and begins snaking its way northwest into southern Vermont, and then it crosses into New York. It turns north and swings through Hoosick Falls, picks up the Wallamsack River, then turns west and bends its way toward the Hudson, which is a journey of about 70 miles.
Okay, so Hoosick River, the Hoosick River poem cycle, is that the right word?
Yeah, I think so.
Is it ongoing? Are you still adding and building this poem cycle?
Yeah. In fact, so I've got 6 sections up on my website, which I kind of consider finished. A few weeks back, my field mate, Daniel O'Connor, and we performed at a really cool pizza shop in Hoosick Falls called Bite, B-Y-T-E. And we performed these 6 segments of the poem with percussion. And I can give you a link to my website where they are. People can actually listen to that recording. We actually recorded the evening's performance. But with that said, I think I have 4 or 5 more sections that I'm working on already, in draft form. And honestly, Todd, I don't know when it's going to stop. Who knows? Does this turn into a whole Like book length manuscript? I don't know, but I'm envisioning maybe 12 to 15 sections.
Uh-huh. We want to share, or you want to share a section called South Corridor. And so I'm going to let you set this up, David, and then share your words.
Great. Thanks, Todd. This poem is a little bit different from a lot of my form because it's probably a little more narrative. It's kind of those history poems that I love to write. It fits into a larger, broad theme that comes up in a lot of my work, which is, the names, the places